Welcome everybody back to Friar Talk, back to an actual pre-recorded video. It has been a fat minute since we did one of these, but we're going to be starting to do a little bit more of these segments, more just as the season's underway. We have some talking points and stuff that we want to talk about kind of to the side, besides just kind of going game by game through this stuff. And the first thing that is very obvious to, I feel like, everyone. I feel like this has been honestly the only thing people have been talking about on Twitter, except a couple people have for some reason been like worried about Manny Machado, but that's not really a thing. But the big thing is, it is time for Luis Campusano to be the starting catcher. The primary catcher, whatever you want to call him. Obviously, a catcher never really plays every day. That's super rare. So I'm kind of thinking more of 4 games to 2 games. And I think that we should see that very, very soon. So, in my opinion, I think that Luis Campusano should be the starter. I feel like we have seen enough of a sample size of Austin Nola, and we don't know how good Luis Campusano is. Guess what? He might not be that good. That still doesn't mean that this is not a good move by the Padres, because it's at least worth it for them to see what they have with Luis Campusano before they decide to, make an upgrade or try to trade for someone. Because at this point, if you have Austin Nola behind the plate, you cannot have him as your primary catcher being a World Series contender. That just cannot happen. We were looking into Baseball Savant, a couple things like that. And I feel like some people have kind of been a little bit defensive of Austin Nola being like, hey, we struggle to throw guys out, but it's because, the new rules. Austin Nola is first percentile in pop-up time, and he has one of the weakest arms at the catcher position. So we know what he is. And I feel like I'm ripping him. I feel bad for it. I like the guy. He seems like a good person, but it's just become time where it's like we know who Austin Nola is, and it is time for Luis Campusano to start. Isaac, is there anything that you disagree with me saying right there? And also, what's your overall thoughts on just the catcher position right
now? No, I don't disagree at all. I mean, I think this kind of been at the forefront of, even before the season, we had constantly said, I don't know, man. I think Austin Nola's value kind of goes down with the new rules, and through, what is it, 15 games now, something around there. That's proven true. His OPS is like 300. His batting average is under 100. His on base percentage is not much higher than that. So not even at the plate, he's not producing enough to where you can warrant, hey, he's not that good behind the plate, but at the plate, he's good. No, neither of it is true. He's not a valuable player. He's going to be negative in WAR at this rate. He's going to be an invaluable player. He's essentially going to be the new Eric Hosmer. And that's not a player that a championship caliber team wants on your field. You can't have that. If he was like, some sort of defensive specialist, and apparently he was supposed to be this defensive specialist and super good at calling games, but these guys are like pretty much calling their own games now. Darvish has pitch com, Blake Snell has pitch com. These guys can call their own games. And if he's not providing any value, then why not see the guy that's been a top prospect in your farm system forever, you've been waiting to bring up, that's constantly, he's hitting the ball hard. He got 3 hits the other day. I feel like his framing has improved. It's still only the 20th percentile on Baseball Savant, but it was better than it was a few years before. Even in 2021, it didn't look that as good as it does now. Blocking, he's solid at blocking now. His pop time is under a 2, or at least it was under a 2. Do you get any of that with Austin Nola? I don't think so. Blocking maybe, but there's a lot of question marks right now for this certain position. And you look at the rest of the roster, everything else is locked down, man. Everyone else looks good, at least defensively. I know at the plate, not everyone looks good. With runners in scoring position, it's been a struggle for the Padres, ranking like 25th or something like that with runners in scoring position. But they've been able to win games. They've been able to put up a lot of runs. But the one constant thing that we're looking at is, well, there's a big weakness at the catcher position right now because this certain player is starting constantly. He's starting a back-to-back. He started the last game against New York, first game against Milwaukee. That doesn't often happen for Austin Nola, but for whatever reason, it's happening today, which is the first day we're recording. We're recording first game against the Brewers. But Luis Campusano is going to split the series with Austin Nola, apparently. So he will be catching 2 games, and Campusano will be catching 2 games, each 2 games. So we'll see how they go. I'm assuming we're going to see Campusano the second and the fourth game, Nola the first and the third. But We'll see how it all goes, man. I mean, I think everyone's kind of in a consensus right now in the Padres, i- among Padre fans is what I'm trying to say. We're all in agreement that Austin Nola is not going to be your guy.
Yeah, and I feel like I didn't really talk about Luis Campusano at all. I just kind of talked about the fact that like we know who Austin Nola is at this point. I'll get into a little bit of Austin Nola stuff, and then I'll talk about Campy for a little bit because I still do find Campy pretty intriguing as a player. But for Austin Nola, I mean, the big thing is pop up time, right? I said he was first percentile. Well, okay, it's only been a few games. Last year he was 19th percentile. 2021 he was 25th percentile. 2020 he was 75th percentile. Obviously, that's a short season, but he's decreased in that aspect every single year. It's like it's a trend that you don't want to see, especially in a catcher, especially when the rules now are so favored towards stealing bases that you need a guy that actually has an arm. Campy has an arm. Campy might not be that great defensively. He might. I mean, I feel like the biggest thing with Campy that at least it got like kind of would get brought up is like, oh, his framing's not that good. It's like, okay, he can have below average framing, and it doesn't really matter about calling games anymore, like you just said, because he's not calling games really at this point. Like it's more dependent on the pitcher with kind of the changes with PitchCom. So if you're looking, you're going, okay, well, let's just say the calling game doesn't really matter that much. Where is Campy lacking in at least potential behind Austin Nola? Like framing a little bit? Okay. Does that mean as much as we're making it out to mean? Because, okay, I'll give you another one. Play discipline. Well, what's a good way to get Campy some plate discipline? How about we let him see some MLB pitching, man? Like, how about we let him see, like, we need to let him see some at bats. And I remember, I think I tweeted this out right before he went 3 for 4. I think it was the day before. And I was like, it's just time. Like, we don't need to see Austin Nola anymore. Like, this is just kind of like ridiculous. And I keep in mind, like, both also, like, our show and me specifically, I was high on Austin Nola. I thought he could be really good. I didn't think that he would ever put up power numbers or anything like that. But my thought was, hey, this guy can be a decent hitter for average. He can get on base at a high clip, and he can be a really good defensive catcher. Well, the game's changed a little bit with the changes to stealing bases, and now he's not even getting on base at a high clip. He is injured. He did get hit in the face. He did get fractured, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to work out with Austin Nola. And I feel like we're just kind of like, And you're even seeing that. Isaac, you brought up they're going to be splitting the series. That's as obvious as a sign as anyone that they're what is it 12 games into the season right now when we're recording this, I want to say, and they're already splitting reps. That is a sign. That is an absolute sign. So I feel like it's something that we're definitely bound to see with Campusano. I feel like Campusano, like a lot of people are like, hey, he hasn't really produced at the plate. Because if you look at it, his overall numbers, he played in 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. Now, in that entire time, he has 101 at bats, and he's hitting a buck 98 and has like 516 OPS. Right? It's not good. Well, he's played like a handful of games sporadically throughout the course of 4 seasons. He's basically been a minor leaguer. If he gets consistent reps, he will improve at the plate. I can't say he's going to improve defensively. Maybe he's maxed out there, but he's improved defensively in the minors over the past 2-3 years, and that's a huge sign. But at the plate, he's going to improve. If he can have a little bit more plate discipline and he can hit like 240 with the power that he brings, he might be a plus offensive catcher when you look around the league. He might be below average defense. He might not get on base at all, but he's going to provide some pop. So I still think that Campy could actually end up being a decent player. Now, we've seen the last guy I thought that was going to be a decent player was Francisco Mejia, and that did not work out at all. But like, I want to see reps. It almost feels like the same situation. Like, okay, we figured out pretty quick that Austin Hedges was not that guy. He was not. And now we're seeing it almost the same kind of situation where it's the defensive guy and the guy that kind of is flashing offense is a prospect. Well, maybe Campy will turn out better than Mejia. And I think it's something that the Padres should risk. They should at least try. And if they look up and it's July, June, whatever it is, and both these guys are not playing well, and they've tried to give Campy reps and he just hasn't looked good, then go and make a trade. But we're not there yet. And you can salvage that. You can salvage that position if Campy turns into something good. So I want to see Campy out there a lot more.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You can salvage it. I think the first step, though, is you definitely got to give Campusano a lot more reps at the plate. You're right. His plate discipline isn't very good. However, even if his plate discipline isn't good, it's not like Austin Nola's getting on base at some super high clip. He's not walking a lot. So even if Campusano doesn't walk a lot, it kind of just washes out because neither of them walk a lot. But one supplies much more power, can hit the ball much further to provide some RBIs. Austin Nola, he hasn't shown the ability to do that. He hit like 2 home runs last year. Luis Campusano can hit 10 to 15 home runs if you give him enough at bats, probably even more. But yeah, the whole thing with Austin Nola, man. I mean, yes, he was okay last year, but the rules weren't in place last year. Guys weren't stealing all the time. And keep in mind, this year so far, and you can blame some of them on Blake Snell's slow approach to the plate and you Darvish's, but Austin Nola's thrown one guy out. I think 16 guys have taken a bag on him. And even previously, I think 50 to 60 guys in 2021 or 2022, 60 guys took bags on him. He only threw out 13, 15, something like that. That's a massive difference. So, I mean, it wasn't really shown. It wasn't really magnified how poor he is at throwing guys out, at, holding the runner at first. No, everyone's been able to steal on him. It's been known. The Diamondbacks abused him. The Mets abused him. I mean, it's starting to become constant, and we can't afford for that to happen. We can't afford for someone to get walked or hit a single, and then on the very next pitch, the guy steals. It is exactly like a player hitting a double and putting himself in a scoring position with no outs or 1 out. It happens. It's happened too frequent, even up to this point. And there's no guarantee that that doesn't happen with Luis Campusano. But there's a massive difference that even if Luis Campusano isn't throwing guys out, at least minimum, he's hitting the ball hard. He's getting the ball out of the infield. He's getting guys in. He had 3 hits the other day, and he looked fantastic. They were all hit hard. They were all hit pretty solid. Yeah, there's not really much to say about this catching situation other than it's time. It's time to split those reps. I understand, some of these catchers or some of these pitchers like throwing Austin Nola. You know who else Yu Darvish supposedly liked throwing to? He liked throwing to Victor Caratini. The Padres got rid of Victor Caratini. He starts throwing to a different catcher, that catcher being Austin Nola, of course, and he has a good year. He has a great year. However, that's not because of Austin Nola. I firmly believe that is not because of Austin Nola. But I think Yu Darvish might get caught by Luis Campusano this series. Hopefully, that'd be pretty interesting. Just to see what happens there. Just because we do need to see Luis Campusano catch Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove. We've already seen him catch Joe Musgrove, but these other guys to ensure that there's trust there. But other than that, man, I think it was evident when the Padres pinch hit for Austin Nola that they think it's time as well. They're splitting the reps this weekend. They're showing, hey, we also think it's time. But one thing that might be holding them back from giving the full, and this happens in all sports, they're trying to salvage that trade. Because I don't like ripping AJ Preller's trades. I don't like, especially with the position the Padres are in now. I don't even like ripping AJ Preller. But this is the one where you look and say, hey, we gave up a guy that's pretty damn good in Ty France, and we give up more pieces to get this unvaluable player. But the only way they can show, hey, we didn't lose the trade that bad, is getting him back there.
That's true. That's very true. And honestly, Chase and I, we've been a lot more fond of ripping AJ Preller for his trades. Isaac, you usually are like, I don't know, it's kind of a wash. Like, it kind of happens. And yeah, where the Padres are at now, there's no reason to really rip anyone. But I guess we're ripping Austin Nola, so I guess that's not really accurate. But one other thing I was going to say, Isaac, you also brought this up a lot in the offseason that, like, hey, Austin Nola is going to lose so much value. Austin Nola is going to lose so much value. You kept harping that. And, like, I feel like I believe that, but you were, like, really big on that. You were really big on that, remember? And it makes a lot of sense. And literally the start of the season, we have seen that, like, perfectly to a T. Like, this guy cannot throw guys out. And you said it. I was going to bring it up. This was going to be one of the things I wanted to wrap up with. If a guy walks, if Nola's catching Snell We know how Snell just loves to walk like half the lineup, right? How many guys in scoring position is that? Because they're stealing every time. And that is going to hurt you so bad. So that's kind of the final thing is like that's just the part. It's like that's just not going to get it done. Now, we're going to see some speed added to our lineup when Fernando comes back. I'm sure the Padres are going to start to adapt a kind of move where they're or like a strategy where they're trying to steal more bases. But in terms of defensively, it's just like he's not a plus player defensively anymore. In fact, he's a very negative player defensively all of a sudden with this rule change, and that's I think the biggest change. Where like we could handle him not having a lot of power at the bottom lineup, but still getting on base, okay. Hitting the sack, occasional sack fly, driving a guy in every once in a while, and being really good with the pitching staff. But like it's a lot different this year, and I think that's why we're seeing the effect so quickly and so heavily. But it's campy season for sure. It is 100% campy season. So with that said, though, that's gonna do it. Gonna have a shorts vid. I'm gonna edit it kind of nice. It's gonna be kind of cool on the enigma of Blake Snell tomorrow about how he is one of the strangest players ever that I've ever watched in terms of this guy can be dominant and then he can suck and it's like so up and down, but yet it's consistent at the same time. So I'll have that out Saturday morning, and then I think we're streaming on Sunday. Isaac, I don't know if you and Chase are going to Coachella. What's the deal with that? If you guys are, I'll do a solo live, but we'll be back on Sunday as well. So a couple things coming up, but besides that, yeah, I think that'll do it. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to y'all very soon.